What would you miss about the pandemic? Commuting literally is killing the planet, see global warming. Sure, there are many other contributing factors, but isn't part of making things better stopping stuff you don't need to do that hurts the environment? It has been nearly 2 years working from my basement. In that time I have hired globally, built a new team, done a ton of work, engaged deeply and globally with our customers, and the company has made a shit ton of money. No, that isn't everybody's experience. It is ours, so why the hell would we ever go back to driving every day to the office and back home? All it does is burn dinosaurs and warm the atmosphere and cause cancer. Yes. I'm in rural southeast England, on the outskirts of a small village, 1,500 population, and have been going for lunchtime walks for years. My route is a rough square, around 1.3 miles, taking about half an hour-ish. In the before times, it would be unusual to encounter any more than 2 or 3 people on the average round, counting only other pedestrians. During the first lockdown, when we weren't allowed anywhere except for our 1 HR of daily local exercise, the route turned into fucking Piccadilly Circus, very busy area in London. You could say it was like Times Square. On one circuit I counted 17 people. 17. Oh, and, first world problem here, sorry, also we have a tiny bit of land with a public footpath running around / through some of it, and this meant that we had an influx of newbie country walkers who had no fucking idea how to follow the signs and keep out of areas only accessible by going through locked gates. And they had the audacity to act all snippy when told they were trespassing. I'm hoping all these fair-weather ramblers will eventually dwindle away once the novelty has worn off and they're back to spending all their spare time, and money, at the nearest shopping center or wherever they usually lurk. Edit, typo/word choice. I try not to complain because really we are extremely lucky. However, there are a few cons to counter the pros. We have to have, and pay for, public liability insurance, in case of accidental injury. We have to maintain the paths to ensure they are passable. People can and do complain to the local authority if the usual flora and fauna obstruct the path, or if a tree has fallen across it, etc. Recently, a neighbor witnessed an adult have a tantrum because his son got pricked by a bramble thorn on the path. He grabbed a fence post and yanked it around until it broke. Dickhead. We have to ensure the gates/stiles are maintained and safe, and pay to have them replaced. The worst one is the public themselves though. A few people make it more difficult than it should be by acting entitled and not following the guidelines. Leaving dog mess everywhere, allowing their dogs to run free, including where sheep are kept, as if the whole area is public land, and ignoring the rules about keeping dogs under close control, i.e., on a lead, and going into areas that are clearly not accessible to the public. But I also have the benefit of having used footpaths throughout my life, and I understand their importance in terms of conservation and also in their ability to allow people to explore areas that may otherwise have been out of bounds. Oh yeah, the drive was nice, but it fucking sucked looking out the window into a mostly empty parking lot because we were basically the only ones not allowed to work remote. I'm in IT, and it being such nice days out. They had a rule for COVID that if you were sick for any reason, you couldn't come into work for at least 10 days after symptoms were gone. I faked it twice and I loved just sitting in my screened lanai with my laptop on the bar while I did work. I could sleep in, take breaks when I wanted, take a shit for as long as I wanted without people in the same small office area going, "Hey, where were you for so long?" OMG, I worked in food service for longer than I would like to admit. Not because I like interacting with people or making coffee or sandwiches, but because that's all that would hire me, and my oldest was under the age of 10. I hate people, and I attribute that to food service. People are fucking rude to food service workers. I used to get told all the time I should smile or should smile more, like fuck off, you just talked down to me and treated me like I was subhuman, you got your damn coffee/sub, now get out of my face. My other favorite was, you must have made some poor life choices to be in your 30s making subs. I keep trying to explain to my parents why there are so many open jobs but no one wants them. Like, they're all minimum wage jobs in the service and food industries, many customers are entitled assholes, and there's a pandemic. You can't pay people a shit wage to deal with assholes during a pandemic if they have pretty much any other options. It's self-preservation for one. Also, a global pandemic and seeing a bunch of people die, and possibly even getting COVID yourself, has a way of shifting our perspectives on what's important in life and what we are willing to put up with. Also, wages in those industries have been unfair for decades. Something just finally came along to break the camel's back. I wonder if bosses will ever finally cave and pay better wages, or if the whole economic system just needs to collapse before something, hopefully, better can emerge in its place. Nobody likes to hear this, but the reason doctors' offices have those waits is doctors don't kick patients out the second their 15-minute, or whatever the allocated time is, appointment is up. They take the extra time when patients need it, and they likely will do the same for you. This leads to some wait time. The alternative is the doc has a stopwatch and kicks you out the second your time is up. He won't talk to you about your side hurting, you'll have to make a separate appointment for that since your med refill took 15 minutes. I work in a clinic as well. We also have to consider patients that come in past their appointment time. In our clinic, we give up to 30 minutes late. Parents are bringing in kids, some travel from hours away, etc. We are understanding. However, those that arrive late do affect everyone else that's there. It isn't something that can always be controlled, and it's frustrating for everyone. Because we work with people in healthcare, with a wide range of diagnoses, timing isn't perfect. Luckily, the doctors I work with try to space out their patients, depending on the level of complications. I understand that it sucks to wait a long time, I am a patient too. I had a telehealth appointment myself, where I was logged in. My doctor didn't connect until 1 hour later. The previous patient was a little more complicated. Luckily, I had nowhere to be. Otherwise, I would have rescheduled. There is just a lot going on behind the scenes, unfortunately, that can affect the timing. In my previous job, IT help desk, literally just a call center, working from home was impossible. We were told that software we used won't work on Wi-Fi and we need to be connected to corporate network via cable. We were working 24/7, including all holidays, so working from home would be awesome sometimes. But if it's impossible, then fine. I've changed jobs, COVID happened, and guess what? They're working from home now. So the software actually can, and always could, work with VPN on personal Wi-Fi. How curious. Similarly, I volunteer in dog rescue stuff, and the pandemic has allowed me to take care of litters of bottle babies. I've done 2 litters, both were abandoned/dumped at birth, so I got them within hours of entering the world. They require feeding every couple hours, which you can never do if you're in an office all day, but is surprisingly easy working from home. Watching these puppies go from abandoned little lumps to real-life puppies that are adopted by loving families has been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever been a part of. It's like raising children in hyperspeed. When beaches were starting to clear, beaches near me were more beautiful than they ever had been. Wild animals were roaming the empty city streets. It was incredible to see how quickly nature took itself back before we ruined it again. When lockdown restrictions started to get lifted, people flocked to the beaches where they left all their rubbish, setting fires, leaving alcohol bottles and cans, etc. It's hard to blame people for enjoying themselves, especially after being inside for so long, but I feel like they quickly forgot about how insanely beautiful everything was when we didn't interfere. Unfortunately, even though staying at home 24/7 would be living the dream for me, I've been an essential worker this whole time. One good thing I can say though, is that because of the whole social distancing thing, there is way more acceptance of the introverted lifestyle. At least for now, I'm not viewed as sad or unfulfilled because I'm not choosing to spend all my free time out with other people. Most folks respect my space more now than ever. And I know it's a weird take, but this pandemic has kind of forced the absolute chaos and injustice of our society to light. No one can deny it anymore, no matter the cast. If we're ever gonna be able to salvage the scraps and rebuild, I think this would be our opening. And if we're truly fucked again, at least it's not hush hush anymore. The clean air. Where I live, New Delhi, India, it's one of the heavily populated places, and during winter there are literally smogs so bad people have to wear masks. Those with lung diseases also suffered the most. I hated the air. With the pandemic, the skies were clearer and the air was purer than I have ever felt. I feel like I am breathing clean air, for goodness sake. I watch these articles about climate change, but this pandemic has somehow made me feel that nature does have a reaction to what we damage, and if we don't stop we will pass away, just like the dinosaurs. I will miss the air. I will miss the clear skies. Pensive face. Edit. My English is so terrible. I live in a very touristic city that had been ramping up its tourism campaigns for the past decade or so. We were just overrun with international tourists and the infrastructure couldn't keep up. Taking any kind of public transportation, or visiting any location with any kind of reputation was just an exercise in extreme patience. Once the borders were closed, the city became like a wonderful playground for locals. Essentially zero international tourists and very, very few domestic ones. Some of the most famous and crowded spots became ghost towns. It was amazing, and even a bit eerie at times. I'll be honest, where I live got off lucky. On an island with very few cases, all things considered, my work was not affected by the pandemic. Municipal drinking water plant manager. People still need to drink/wash, so we trucked on like nothing changed. I have no kids, so no school closures affected me. About the only change in life pre and post pandemic is masking up to shop. The only aspect of work affected by the pandemic was masking up to accept deliveries from off-island suppliers of our chemicals and materials. My wife and I just went to Disney World and Universal in Florida last week. Gotta say, the low wait times on the rides will be missed. In Universal, I think the longest we waited on a ride was maybe 15 to 20 minutes. In Disney, it was about 35 minutes. Sometimes in both places we'd almost walk onto the ride in a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. It was crazy. Considering wait times can normally be like an hour or even 2 hours. I feel like not as many people are currently going out there right now, so the lines aren't that long. There's still a good bit of people out there, but nothing compared to a normal time. I have done very well during the pandemic. Working from home has given 2 hours of my life back 5 days a week. Besides the hours of my life back, it has reduced my cost of living with saving on gas, laundering my work clothes, and packing lunch. I take a bike ride most days on my lunch break. The dogs are never left alone for long hours. Not having a ton of family and friend obligations. I have lost family from COVID. I would not trade their lives just because I like working from home. I do like working from home though. The minor saving from not having a commute was enough to push me into being completely debt-free also. The director of the company I worked for decided to shut the business down a week or so before COVID really hit hard. I found out on my birthday, via text message, that I'd lost my job. I had a 5-week-old baby at home. Also, my dad died less than 2 months before the baby was born. I was still grieving and so tired. It was probably the worst time of my life. I needed to find a job all of a sudden, along with seemingly every other person in the country, whilst grieving for my dad and seriously sleep deprived. New parents will know. But we made it through, and looking back now, I'm so glad I got those 2 months at home with my new baby. It was a hard time, but I wouldn't change it if I could now. As crazy as it sounds, I have liked it. Before, I could have 2 to 3 appointments either for myself or at least one of my 3 kids in a week. When you have autoimmune disorders and chronic pain, it can take it out of me. Now the majority of appointments are telephone consultations, which suits me fine. I never used to like going out much anyway. I am more in contact with my mom now than before, ringing at least twice a week, and I always end the call with "I love you," same with my sisters. The only downside is it's caused my youngest son's anxiety to heighten because he's worried he may pick it up and give it to me. I'm fully vaccinated but reacted really bad to both of them, which could still put me at a high risk of complications if I do catch it. Very briefly, there weren't any cars on the roads. The air was noticeably cleaner where I am, and while people were maintaining social distancing, they at least acknowledged you with an awkward smile, a hello, and an exaggerated change of pace or path to give room. People were trying new things like sourdough bread, growing veg, or learning to knit, as most of us had more time for hobbies and didn't feel exhausted from the normal commute and working hours. We got to spend more time with our families, friends, and the people that mattered, rather than seeing our bosses more than we saw our kids. The ability to step out from your work more easily. I actually like being back in the office usually, but what I miss is the flexibility of being able to say, "Hey, I'm out of groceries and I'm not doing anything time sensitive right now, so I'm just going to go to the store." Or, "Sure, not a problem to pick up my nephew from school at 2 o'clock today." Or even, "Honestly, I need a 20-minute nap." And with that, during peak pandemic, I had taken to calling my friends, especially those I don't see often because they live in different cities, and just talking for hours to catch up. Friends I usually didn't see except maybe for a day or two when we were back in our hometown for Christmas, I was suddenly talking to for a couple hours every week. It was easier when everyone's schedule was pretty flexible. Now we're at work or already out for drinks with someone or at a dinner, it's a lot harder. I would say working in a quiet, empty office, but I just got a new job that is overnight hours, so when COVID is over I now have a permanent quiet, empty office job. The other cool thing that happened is my job was sending cabs to pick me up since they didn't want us taking the bus or train to work. Free cab every day to and from work. Since I quit that job I lost that perk, but it was going away as soon as the COVID numbers went down. They already took it away from us once when the numbers were super low in the summertime. Having the stress of people and strangers' expectations of my body. Just existing as a physical being, in a constant state of being judged. I didn't realize how much body anxiety I carried until it was gone. Not even an option. I even started dating again. After some really cruel shit from my ex that I guess stuck to me really intensely, I just needed space to completely and fully exist in an expectation-free zone to shed all that. Now that society is happening again, I am starting to experience a bit more of that worry and stress, nowhere near as bad as it was before, but it's there. Constant.